Well, to help us recap this year's APEC Leaders Meeting, I'm joined by Bruno Binetti. He's a research associate with the Office of the President at the Inter-American Dialogue right here in Washington. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Bruno, tell us some of these key highlights from the APEC meetings. What really stood out?
So what stood out was the contrast between what happened and what leaders thought this summit was going to be only a few weeks ago. This was going to be the goodbye tour of Barack Obama from the presidency, expecting a relatively smooth transition towards President Hillary Clinton. And it ended up being a gathering where Obama's main role was to explain what just happened in the US elections and how will the US move forward from now. So it ended up being a Trump summit. So
do you think that actually overshadowed some of the things they were expecting to talk about then?
I think so, absolutely. Even though TPP was opposed by both Trump and Hillary Clinton, the expectation was that Clinton was willing to modify parts of the agreement and get it through Congress. There are people in both the Republican and the Democratic Party that are willing to pursue TPP. With the election of Trump, that has changed dramatically. And Obama's message in the summit was trying to tell leaders that the US will not withdraw from world trade and from world politics, a message that is hard to convey right now because we still don't know what a Trump administration will look like.
Now let's look at some of the other messages from the meetings. We saw that in their final declaration, the 21 world leaders promised to advance quality growth and human development. Why, especially at this point in time, do you think that's so important?
So the entire message was also about the potential of trade to bring growth and development. I think that was a response to growing anti-globalization movements in the US, in Europe, and in other countries. So the key and the challenge moving forward for Pacific countries will be to transform trade into an instrument of social development and not into a factor in, for instance, inequality. So I think that's the main challenge they try to convey with that statement.
Now, in President Xi's keynote address, he mentioned a number of things that he was calling on APEC countries to do, including having more open and integrated economies, better interconnected development, reform, innovation. Now, as global economic growth falters, how big of a role should APEC countries be playing in kind of really getting those engines of growth jump-started?
So one of the main messages of this summit, I think, was that the world, and especially Pacific countries, are willing to continue moving forward with, for instance, trade agreements with or without the United States. We still don't know what the US will do. What we do know is that, for instance, China is willing to fill any void that the US leaves in this area. Remember, TPP was part of Obama's pivot to Asia, and now that's in question. So I think all of these countries want more trade. They already have, several of them have trade agreements with China. So I think the main message from this is that they are willing to move forward.
Now, the APEC trading bloc accounts for nearly half of all global commerce. So what's the mood then when they see this kind of shifting sentiment? And we even saw that President-elect Trump saying within his first 100 days of office, he plans to initiate that withdrawal from the TPP. What does all this mean, especially for countries that perhaps are either part of the TPP or may perhaps shift their interest to things like RCEP?
Exactly. So for now, I think these are complex processes. This will not happen overnight. Even if Trump comes to the White House, he knows, or that was Obama's message, that quickly withdrawing from international trade would hurt the US economy. So what countries are doing is, for now, waiting and seeing how a Trump administration will take form. We don't know who the Secretary of State will be. We don't know any other key cabinet positions. But in the meantime, what they're doing is showing the potential Trump administration that even if the US turns into more protectionist policies, the rest of the world won't necessarily do that. And of course, in the Pacific, which is now the engine of the world economy, this is a very important message.
And just quickly, Bruno, the idea of a Trans-Pacific partnership that doesn't include the US, what would that potentially look like? How different would that be?
It's hard to believe that these countries would be able to close a deal. Most of them, first of all, already have trade agreements with each other. In the Pacific Rim, we have what we call the spaghetti bowl of different overlapping trade agreements. So without the United States, for sure, China will take a much bigger role. And I think most countries will try to shift to China instead of finding an agreement without China or the United States.
Definitely something we'll be keeping an eye on. Thank you so much,
Thank
Bruno
you.
Binetti from the Inter-American Dialogue.